We're recording.
Welcome to the April 16th, 2025 jointly noticed meeting of the Brookline School Committee and the Finance Subcommittee of the Brookline School Committee. Before we get into the agenda, I'm going to call on Representative Tommy Vitolo to provide some information to the school committee that we'll discuss a little bit later in the agenda. Tommy, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and I appreciate lending me just a minute for this meeting. As you may or may not know, the House budget was released today. It's a very big document. I'm not done reading it. But I can tell you this, in February, the school committee met with the delegation and asked us to do our best to get some more money from the state for funding of public schools in Brookline. And we in the House, that is myself, Representative Honan, Representative McGregor, and Representative Schwartz, have delivered. And the way that we delivered is this. We and our colleagues have put together a House budget that creates a minimum per pupil spend of $150. My understanding is that wisely and cautiously, PSB was budgeting about half of that. And this delta, the delta in dollars, is just about $500,000 between what PSB was budgeting for Chapter 70 through the minimum student aid and what we have in the House budget released today. Now, I want to be very clear. The House doesn't even vote on this budget until almost exactly 2 weeks from right now. Then the Senate is going to do a budget. Then it has to go to conference. Then the governor has an opportunity for a line item veto, right? So it's not done yet. It's also the case that there are other changes in the budget that may impact the total amount of revenue that Brookline receives from the state through non-educational and other educational line items. And of course, there is a town-school partnership that you and others in town have to navigate. So I cannot tell you with any amount of precision what this dollar amount ultimately has in terms of impact on the current school budget gap. What I can tell you is that you asked us to try to get some more money, and that the House delegation responded with a $500,000 increase in Chapter 70 funding, and we're very proud of that and hopeful that this will provide you a little bit of movement in the direction that you all are working so hard to get to. Happy to answer any questions. I know that there's not an opportunity for discussion at this time, and I apologize. I can't stay, but I wanted to share this great news with this subcommittee that I know is working so hard on this issue.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is a question for you, Tommy, or for Melissa. But at what point does the dollar amount get incorporated into Melissa's projections? Do you know?
That's a question for Melissa.
Okay. Susan, you don't know? Do you know?
I had a conversation with Melissa earlier, and as soon as she gets the cherry sheets, which have all adjustments to state aid, then she can update the revenue projections. So hopefully they'll have that soon, the next few days, I hope.
Okay.
I would expect that's right. And again, just to remind folks, right, the Senate could do something different. Historically, things have only moved upward, but that's not a guarantee for this year or any other year in the future.
Thank you very much for the update, Tommy. Much appreciated. And thanks for making time. Helen, do you have a question for Tommy?
Well, no, it's probably not, though he may know the answer. I can't remember with additional income, is that split 60-40 or is that, or do we get all of Chapter 70?
Susan is rushing to tell us the answer.
Sorry.
Yes, which one?
So it goes through the split process.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay, so it's 60% on this one?
Well, it would be whatever the net is. So Melissa had shared with me that, so I'll tell you what she said. She said Chapter 70 went up by 516,000, but other areas went down. by 171,000. So they'll need the full cherry sheet to understand the impact. And when they have each of those components of the revenue will be adjusted, that's gross revenue. Then, of course, it filters through all those other components. So the above the line costs get netted out, and then we ultimately get down to the split. So it really does depend upon what other changes were made to other assessments, other state aid components of the assessment.
I don't
So-
think there should be anything above the line because that's all funded.
No, but the gross revenue is above the line, Helen. Gross revenue,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So whatever shifts are made in the gross revenue numbers up and down have to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Any more questions for Tommy? I know, Tommy, you said you have a short time frame, so I don't want to hold you. Okay, well, thank you so much again for joining us. Much appreciated. And we'll look forward to getting the updated budget info from Melissa and Susan.
All in due time. Thank you again for all of your hard work, and get back to it. Goodbye now.
Bye. Okay, we'll now return to our regularly scheduled programming. So first item on the agenda is approval of the February 26th and March 5th Finance Subcommittee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll move it. Yes. Oh,
Okay, I'll take
uh,
Sarah as a second.
I'll
Sarah, how do
second.
you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is approval of grants. And we have one grant that is up for consideration, which is a Metco grant for $15,000 to support tutoring for ninth grade Metco students in physics and in English. Any questions from the subcommittee? Go ahead, Carolyn.
Sorry, because I'm just catching up with this a little bit now. Is this the same one that came to us before, but maybe it's revised now?
Yes.
And so is this, when does the tutoring? Okay, it's after school. Correct?
Malcolm, did I see you here?
It
Malcolm
says
here?
Yes,
after
I'm here.
school.
Okay. Oh, there you are. Great. Thank you. Malcolm, do you know how many hours that represents, the 15,000?
I've never calculated that way. It's it's one day in person a week with options for virtual support.
Okay.
So that one day is roughly 90 minutes in person, but particular if like there were an exams or something, or if you wanted to go over a draft, they can get help in other subjects, but the biggest deficiency we've seen with our MECO students in transitioning from 8th to 9th grade is in physics and in English. And so that's where the primary focus is. But like if they do, they could get virtual support like at an agreed time during the week. So yeah, so I've never calculated exactly per hour. And this was the contract Libya's rep had negotiated with MECO headquarters when we applied for the grant.
Got it. Thanks.
And I think we're looking at this later too. Is there a late bus that the Metco grant funds for Metco students?
So not for high school, but yes, there is a late bus that we fund for K through 8. So because the high school has a Green Line stop on campus, and
Okay,
4 buses that drop off with 4 MBTA buses drop off within a half a mile.
okay,
All Boston residents get a free T-Pass.
okay.
And so we don't provide transportation for them beyond that.
Okay, and sorry, and is this the first time we're doing this program, or has this been before?
So this was a very specific grant that came through the MECO
Yeah,
REI program or initiatives. And so, yes, this is the first time.
okay. So hopefully you'll have great participation.
We've had really solid participation. And our
Awesome.
advisor who's there has been really solid about making sure, particularly at the end of first quarter, there were 9 kids that were
Yeah.
really struggling in both areas,
Yeah,
making sure they were there, but also as we got word, and you know, there are kids who drop in as well. And that's beyond MECO kids sometimes. So yeah, so we've had really
Awesome.
solid participation.
thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm. I'll move favorable action on the grant. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, Malcolm, for coming.
I appreciate the approval. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Next item on the agenda is approval of gifts.
Mariah, I might just
Yes.
mention, since it is a jointly posted meeting, these would
Yes.
typically have waited and gone to the next full regular school committee meeting. I don't know if you want to entertain having the full school committee vote on this now or having it go to the next regular meeting.
Let's have it go to the next regular meeting
Okay.
because it'll just be consent agenda at that point,
Yep,
correct?
that's
Yeah,
right.
okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of gifts. We have 3 gifts, but I'm going to park one of them. I can't find the document that I was looking at earlier. Are you going to pull it up, Betsy? Oh, thank you. So the first one is an anonymous gift for $2,500 for the high school's outdoor adventure club in memory of James Penner. The second gift is for and also anonymous for $50 for the Queer Student Union at the high school. Thank you so much to our donors, especially for the first gift for James Penner. And that is very meaningful. We're very grateful for that. And we're going to leave the $8,000 gift for now because I think there were some questions that weren't totally answered before the meeting, and I didn't hear anyone saying that this needed to be accepted tonight. So we will park that one for now. Can I get a motion to accept the first 2 gifts?
I'll move that.
Sarah, do you second?
I'll second.
Okay, how do you vote, Sarah?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you. And then next item on the agenda is new position report. Do you mind making it a little bigger, Betsy?
We'll try, yeah.
I haven't brought my microscope.
I'll kind of scroll over. We lose a bit. Can't quite get it all, but
Susan, are you going to walk us through this?
I am.
Thank
I
you.
am. So it's big enough to see. That's as big as it's going to get. So we'll just go with it there. So there have been some cleanups that happened since the last report. And at that time, I had added positions as placeholders based on information I received from principals and directors who had submitted paperwork through our process that I hadn't yet received and approved by the Office of Student Services. So it goes from a director or a principal, and then to either, if it's an OTL related request, then it goes to Jody. And if it's an OSS related request, it goes to the deputy of OSS. And they review it. They have conversations with folks, and if they approve it, they sign it and they send it to me. So in order to be able to provide you with some information, the last time I plugged them in so we wouldn't lose sight of them with the transition of the deputies and the budget season in full swing. So anyways, I was able to clean this up with Karen. And so you would have seen a number of these in January, a January listing. You'll see that's gone now. So we were able to see where there was repetition of a principal, let's say, had asked for a position, and the same position, there was paperwork submitted by a director, but I didn't have the ability to reconcile that. So all of those shifts have been made, and I've eliminated from the document redundancies. The other thing I did for this one is I made note of like where the funding was. You recall that some of them said TBD the last time because they hadn't really finalized what our plan to close the gap would be. And so now you'll see under fund type, it says general fund, or if we're going to use revolving fund balance or a grant, then I've cleaned that up as well. So so it looks a little different this time because I did a lot of adjusting to reflect that had been approved through the various deputies. So
Can I ask a clarifying question? I have a
sure.
couple. For the first line, eliminate senior director position, is that when we are pausing the bullying initiatives and civil rights position for the current year. Okay, so
Yes.
that's why it's, even though it's actually paused for next year in our budget talks, we had also, it's gone unfilled for this year, and the person who was, okay, is
Yeah.
not contracting anymore. Okay. And
It's-
and then
and
the
frozen.
nurse, okay. So can you just clarify, why is the net cost 24,000? Just so I understand that. Like, if the senior director position was completely eliminated, isn't that a zero? Because, or was there other things that you used the funding for?
Well, the rest of the funding would go to close the gap.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So
And
we
the
froze.
24,000 is because it's a partial year as opposed to a full year of a para? Okay.
Yep.
And then what is tuition revolving fund?
That
Is
is
that,
material. I think you call it material fees, but
okay.
the material
Do
fee,
you think we
tuition
can
revolving.
update that just to say material fee, just to keep our terminology? Is that okay when it's to
Sure.
revise it? Okay. Just because I didn't know what the tuition revolving fund. Other questions from the subcommittee or other members of the school committee?
I think I have a question.
Go ahead.
So Susan, just to clarify what you just said, we're using materials fee funds for, sorry, now that's not, and oh wait, I gotta move my screen or bring it, thank you.
Mhm.
For, so does that mean that the student in question whose IEP calls for this para is a materials fee student in both of these cases? Or you're just using that fund because that's a general fund?
The latter.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from anyone? Okay, thank you so much, Susan. This is really helpful again. And just to note that I had asked earlier, January, February, March, we didn't meet in February and March, and January, those were sort of they weren't totally nailed down. So this, if anyone noticed and wonders why there's nothing January through March, it's because of our meeting cadence and just how the positions have shaken out over time. Helen,
Can we just see the bottom line?
I don't think there is a total, is there?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, just quickly, I really just want to second what you just said, Mariah. Susan, I really appreciate that you've been providing this all year. It's really clear, it's really helpful, and I feel like it's really great communication to have this sort of frequency of just like, here's what's going on a micro level. So thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, next item up is transportation contract renewal, I think. Am I remembering right? Yes.
Yes.
Susan, do you want to take us through it?
Yeah, sure. So we have a couple of different transportation contracts, and you approved a 3-year contract for the special education contract last year. And so that's a 3-year with 2 1-year options to renew. Our regular education, which is before us tonight, is it comes in 2 parts. The Metco transportation is provided by this local motion, and Malcolm just spoke to that. And then Eastern Bus is the purveyor that provides transportation for what we call regular education or before and after school. So that's your K-8 and your South Brookline bus. And so as you know, we reduced and consolidated some of our bus runs. And so in the FY26 budget now, there's $421,000. And in the Metco grant, there's $385,000. And so all of that is like nice and tight in our budgeting process. And now it's time to renew those contracts for next year. A quick look at what was going out in the market, because it is a choice when we are looking at renewals. After the set number of 3-year, the initial 3 years, then we have the option. And so what we'd like to do is exercise the option. Before we do that, we kind of take a peek at what's going on outside if you go out to bid. you know, to determine whether or not, you know, we do better if we went out into the market right now. It does not appear that way. So it looks like the rates are ranging between a 9% to a 26% increase in transportation contracts around the area. And our contracts are increasing by 4.5% for the Eastern and 2% for locomotion. So the Director of Operations, Joe Albuquerque, is recommending that we extend the contract with Eastern Bus and Locomotion for the FY26 school year.
Thank you, Susan. Questions from the subcommittee? Go ahead, Carolyn.
Thanks, Susan. I'm obviously not questioning these choices at all, but I'm curious, I'm interested to see that our in-town, which I think you said we have 3 buses, is that right?
We have the 2 South Brookline BHS, and we have 2, you know, for the K8s.
That go around.
Yeah.
So I'm interested that
Now.
our in-town is more expensive than our Metco, which is 300 plus students coming from Boston to 9 different schools. Is that just the way it works?
Just how the bids came in.
Okay.
And in fact, when I look back on the bids, because I didn't bid this on behalf of the community, but it could have all been awarded to Eastern, but the bid was split this way because of the pricing. The pricing was more favorable to split it between these 2 vendors. So
Okay.
I don't know what the factors were. I didn't put the bid together, but
Thanks.
like the
Okay.
rates are pretty good. So yeah.
Thank you.
Before I call on Helen, I just have another clarification. So this year, just so I can remember, so there's 2 buses for Metco, and then the current year we have 4 buses in town, but then next year is reduced to 2 buses. Is that
Well,
correct?
we have the 6 because we have the high school, the 2 high school, and we have the 4 K8. And so we've eliminated 2 at the K8.
Okay,
And we
and then
still
we're
have the South
retaining 4.
Brookline, right,
Okay,
exactly.
gotcha.
And of course, the busing remains for the Pierce School piece. That doesn't come out of our budget, that comes out of the building project, but
Okay,
we retain that as well. So just so people,
thanks. Helen, go ahead, and then I think we'll take a vote.
The question is about buses, but it's not these. So the buses for athletic events, is that through Eastern Bus or through Locomotion? And do they give us the same rates as they do in terms of these other buses?
that's a good question, Helen, and I would have to look into that.
Oh, yeah, let us know.
I just not on the top of my head.
Yeah, no. And that's paid for through the athletic budget, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. As our field trips, but I just don't know if we have the contract has exclusivity. So sometimes when you write bids, you'll write it with exclusive rights, and sometimes you won't. And I don't know if ours is written that way. And I don't want to rely on my memory and mix up a prior contract term I had with Brookline's. I'd rather not.
One thing for finance members to keep in mind, for a while, Eastern Bus was the only one bidding on bus contracts. I don't know if that's changing, but just to be aware of that.
One other question I have, Susan, this is for these services. Do we have to revote the special education contract later in the spring? That's because it was just recontracted last year for 3 years?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll move favorable action. I guess I'll move recommendation to full school committee to accept extending the contract. Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, I think, is where we turn it over to you, Andy. Is that right?
Sure,
Yes.
I guess so.
Yep.
Okay, in fact, I will turn the first one over to Helen because it's an approval of a change order for the Pierce School. Helen, is there anything you'd like to tell us about this one before voting?
Yes, I'm just, if people want the explanation, it's $8,000. And the reason being that we are building right up next to the neighbor. I think it's on Harvard Street. I can't remember the exact address. Thank you so much. 68 Harvard Street. And there were some problems with the foundations and steel columns that we were concerned about if we were to do any building around there, that those would hold up the building wouldn't come falling down and we'd be responsible. So this was money to the designer to do the design work and investigate the foundations and the steel columns. There'll probably be a change order also for the actual work that needed to be done to shore up those columns. But that's not here.
Thanks, Helen. Would you like to move it?
Yes, I'd love to move it.
Second?
Second.
Thanks, Mariah. Any questions or discussion before we vote? Okay, I don't see any. All right, it's a little hard for me to see who all is on the meeting, so I'm just gonna call out each member. Is it Carolyn?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Okay, well then I'm having to look for other members.
Helen, you didn't call in Helen.
All right, Helen,
Yes.
and I may be the last, so I vote yes on that as well. Okay, good. So this takes us to item number 8, which is continued discussion of the fiscal 26 budget. I did want to give a brief update on a couple meetings earlier this week with our town partners. So as you all know, at the end of last week's school committee meeting, we'd come to the end of, or at least we'd considered all of the proposed cuts that the superintendent was willing to put before the committee. So this was a good time to check in with Town School Partnership and with the select board. So on Monday, we met with Town School Partnership. Susan sort of led everybody through our blue and green spreadsheet line by line. There were some questions about individual items, some factual questions, which I think Town School Partnership is scheduling another meeting where those can be answered. We made everybody aware of the May 1st deadline for sending out pink slips if we do need to do reductions in force. There wasn't a whole lot of general discussion at this meeting. The town administrator said that the goal is going to be to get the select board, school committee, and advisory committee aligned before town meeting. So that was sort of where we left things after Town School Partnership. Helen and Mariah, I know you were part of the meeting as well. Do you have anything to add to the summary?
I was also there.
Sorry, who was that?
Carolyn.
Oh, Carolyn.
I
Yeah.
wasn't part of the meeting, but I was
All
there.
right. I believe I saw Sarah and Carolyn on the call as well.
I don't think I have anything to add, just that in case anyone's confused, it's not a blue and green spreadsheet, it's a red and green spreadsheet.
Oh, did I say blue and green?
Yeah, I heard blue and green, just in
Oh,
case anyone was wondering if there
okay.
was a different spreadsheet they didn't know about.
No, there's no secret spreadsheet. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to select board last night. So for this meeting, I don't know who was watching, but at least Susan, Linus, and I were on the call. So the building department budget was discussed just before school budget. These were fairly brief discussions. There was quite a bit of pushback on the action we took at our last meeting, cutting the building maintenance budget. So there's dispute both on whether these cuts are prudent and on whether we're even entitled to make these cuts at all on our own initiative. So there's certainly going to need to be further discussion about that. When it came to the school department, Susan presented a high-level overview. And I would say that the main outcome of the discussion was that the select board tasked the town administrator to come back to them at their next meeting, which I think is on the 29th, with options to close the remaining gap and sort of some discussion about what the consequences would be for town services and town finances overall. So that's a very brief summary of the select board meeting. It wasn't a very long discussion. But that was, I think, the main takeaway. So I don't know if those others who are present have anything to add to that summary. Carolyn?
Thanks. Yeah, so I was at the Town School Partnership and I watched part of the select board. I would add that select board member Paul Warren asked about the advisability of taking or using one-time funds as a practice. And Dr. Guillory responded that he, well, he could say what he responded. And I would say that I think Town Administrator Carey was kind of pretty clear about were there to be an ask for town funds, kind of where that potentially could or couldn't be. And I think he made a point of saying that were we to look at the Affordable Housing Trust, that we would want to think carefully about how that would play, sort of pitting the school department against the Affordable Housing Trust. So I heard some of that preliminary discussion.
Yeah, I mean, ideas that the town administrator has floated publicly up to now, I would say they include shared service consolidation, which I think for now mainly means legal, and he's clear that that doesn't result in significant savings in the coming year. There's looking at reserve funds on the school side, so basically our revolving fund balances, which are, some of them are sizable at the moment, and what he calls one-time bridging funds, and he's brought up in that connection the design phase of the Lincoln School playground. That's what he's mentioned publicly so far, but you know, it's really only at yesterday's meeting did the select board really task him with coming back to them with some options. So he's expected to do that at their next meeting. And again, we've been emphasizing the May 1st deadline for pink slipping. So there's some urgency on all sides right now. Okay, sorry, I lost track of who had their hand up first. So I'll start with Sarah.
So I'm unclear if we're only discussing right now those two meetings or if we're on to general discussion about the budget.
I think we can have any discussion we want that's generally about the budget. The other thing I was expecting to come up was this pink slipping deadline and you know, what Dr. Guillory has to say about the approach to that, because obviously we don't want to go there, but I think
so that's what I was going to go on to. So I don't know if you want to hear from Dr. Guillory first, or if I should just go ahead and say my comment.
I personally would really appreciate if Linus could sort of speak to his plan and then we could ask questions, if that's okay.
That makes sense.
Thanks.
Unless
sure
Stephen or Susan has a comment to make that specifically about what I or Carolyn just said, and then we can just move on to Dr. Guillory.
I was going to comment about the task of the town administrator, and one of those was to review our revolving fund balance. So there's two things I just want to mention. One is that they're looking at the very balances that we're going to be using in order to close this year's gap. So what they're seeing is what I've already mentioned to you, but in the spirit of cooperation and collaboration, we'll be meeting with our town colleagues tomorrow to review our revolving fund balances, so we're all on the same page and they understand how we are using those balances in our revolving funds to mitigate the impact of our gap. So I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Thanks. My
Stephen,
comment
also about,
my comment, my question was just to ask, or if you wouldn't mind providing a little extra detail on what the select board said on whether the school committee has the authority to change its contribution to building maintenance.
I think I don't remember what everybody said, and not everybody weighed in. And the select board certainly didn't take a vote or anything like that. I think, I mean, there was general unease. I think one member basically said, like, you know,
Which member?
John Van Scoyoc. I remember him saying that, you know, if we decline to pay our assessment in the amount that the town would like us to pay this year, then they'll simply take it out of our next year's allocation. I think the way the town administrator explained this is that the town, quote unquote, assesses the schools for the work that's done on our buildings. And so it's part of our school budget, but it's paid to the town. Right. So the town could assess us. We could decline to pay, but I don't know where that lands us.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I think I've said this before, but I'm not sure. This began with the school committee actually but when we took our budget vote, when in the past, we would take the budget vote and then vote to move money from our budget to the building department for our maintenance, repair and maintenance. That went on for years. It stopped at one point and the town started to do it. And I don't remember exactly when that was. I don't know, Mariah, if you have any recollection about that. But I
I
would
thought that
remember.
was tied to that, the matrix report. Wasn't it tied to the
Right,
matrix report
right.
in
Okay,
2011 or 12? Yeah,
2015. So up
something
until
like that.
then,
Yeah.
it was always our money that was voted in. So we knew what was going to be coming out of our budget when we did that. This change, I mean, I understand it, but I think also, you know, the money does come out of our budget. So there's some discussion that needs to happen, I think.
Right.
So, of course, I voted yes for this last week, but I understand all the reservations and I agree with them, even if I feel like there was just a bad choice or a worse choice, and I made a bad choice, but I didn't particularly love it. But with that said, I do hope that even if the decision is that we should not take the entire 600,000, that hopefully we'd still be able to make decisions like we're not going to wash windows this year and still be able to reach some sort of collaborative agreement at some lesser amount. So I don't know where that's going to end up, but I am certainly supportive of if the 600,000 is an issue, that we see if there's some smaller amount. Again, you know, maybe it's that and the painting, things that really could be delayed. So that's my only thought, is hopefully there's a middle ground.
Okay, if there's no more discussion about that, then let's move to Dr. Guillory, just to discuss like a general approach to the contingency that we would have to send out pink slips on May 1st.
So thank you all. And again, thank you for your engagement in this very difficult process. So we're at the point now where we're getting close, fast approaching the May 1st deadline. And part of the thinking here has been, and again, I'll be very clear, I don't want to go through the pink slipping process. I don't want to do that at all. But I also recognize the commitment that places the district in. So what I've asked the senior leadership team to do is to set up meetings when we return back from break to look at how we would do some form of a controlled identification of staff that we would impact or notice if we are not able to close the gap, or at least identify where funds would come from to close the gap. We have some notice now of the House budget, so that's information that is fresh and hot off the press. So that will have some impact on the numbers. I certainly want to look at the attrition aspect of it. There's also a number of folks that will receive non-renewal notices outside of the riffing process. So all of those pieces in conjunction or together, we work with our building leaders and budget managers to identify selected staff is the process that we'll be using there. This means that in some capacity, it may impact decisions that the committee has previously taken. So my order of operations, and Susan can speak a little bit more because she's teeing this up along with Dr. Fortuna. But my order of operations would be certainly looking at attrition or retirements, looking at where we could minimize impact at all, looking for other opportunities that building leaders may have if they know something about their enrollment trends, and classes that may be able to, if there are adjustments that could be made there and they can move staff around in the building while also doing a consolidation. So we're going to try to take advantage, and that's the wrong term to use, but try to take the opportunity to minimize the impact, but knowing that a gap of this size will definitely impact some folks, but we're not doing some wide scale gross blanketed grab of positions. I think that's been referenced to in the past. Now, my desire is that we don't go through this at all, but I think it's our responsibility, or my responsibility at least, unless directed otherwise by the committee, not to do so, but to prepare us in the instance that we are not able to meet those financial obligations or get the budget closed.
Thanks, Dr. Guillory. So I see Mariah and then Helen.
Thank you, Linus, for that answer. And I appreciate particularly that it's going to be really leveraging attrition, leveraging just where we can make these changes. My question is so say, for example, that attrition might impact a program which the committee has in its recent votes prioritized and decided to retain. So if you were to take that attrition spot and then choose not to fill that position next year, it would still damage that program in some way, though, even though the committee had just prioritized it, right? So how do we make sure that subsequent decisions on this process don't, if that money does not appear later on, that somehow that money, I'm being very inarticulate right now, but somehow those programs aren't somehow that damaged later on down the road because if that money does not come to fruition. Does that question make sense? I feel like that was the worst question ever.
I think I was following
Did
what
you get the gist? Okay, I hope so.
So it's going to be, we're going to do it very carefully in conjunction with all the folks there together, all of our principals and directors as such. And I don't want to put out specific examples because I do have some in mind that I know about right now, but I don't want to put that out because that causes a frenzy around that. But let's say we have a retirement out of snow skiing. And snow skiing has 5 students in it, or that person had 5 students. Well, those 5 students may be able to be redirected to either to another sport or to another section of said activity so that it minimizes the increase in other areas. In some cases, folks are planning for or have been thinking about this when we're going through the budgeting process, hence some of the recommendations that were actually made. But what we're not going to do is go and whole hog as a department undo, and I'll use that frame, undo what the committee has said not to do, but recognize that that level of impact will trickle into those areas. We think right now. You certainly get your retirement notices and those types of things, or people moving out of state or moving closer to home. We get those notices all the time. And so it's a moving target as of such. But we want to do it in collaboration with all of our leaders as such. So as carefully as possible.
Can I just make a comment back, Andy, on that? Like, just because I'm just reflecting on, for example, last year we voted to retain ed tech at 1 per school. And then this year, Lincoln, the ed tech position went away. And so I think that there's this balance between, we talk about like this system of schools versus a school system, right? And so it's helpful I think there needs to be this balance hit between making sure that we're not, that if you go to one school, you still sort of get the same education as you do at another school in Brookline, right? We know what a Brookline education is, and just making sure that that's still being preserved. And again, my hope is that none of these, any potential RIFs would be rescinded in the near future. But if any of them were to stay, that we can still say, yes, an education in one school is what what we all understand it to be, and that it's consistent across the system. That's all through this
Yeah.
process.
No,
Thank you.
very, very much so. And then that notion of, as you said, and I didn't close that piece, certainly if and when the money is restored, then we'll go back and start inviting those people back. And hopefully, again, my desire is not to go through that, but I recognize that I also need to prepare the organization for it as well.
Thank you.
All right, Helen and then Carolyn.
For this, and thank you for taking a scalpel and not a sledgehammer, and really looking at the attrition and the resignation, people who are retiring, because in the past that's been has happened to be quite a bit of money when people retire. My question, or I also wanted to just comment on the fact that I saw that you put out a letter, I think it came from Megan, I'm not sure, about what people's plans were for next year.
Mhm.
When is that due back?
Susan, do you know?
And does anybody who got it remember?
They generally give them a couple of weeks, I think, to respond to it. And I know I was talking with actually two principals today about that, and that's sort of shifted what they were thinking about their sectioning for next year. So that's why it's, I'm being careful about what I share out at this juncture because it can change at any moment. But that's, an example of what a principal was thinking for next year. I have 7 sections, but I know that I can possibly reduce that because I know some students are going out to private schools, some are moving out, so that I can consolidate or close a section, and then I can move that section to another opening that I have in my building, and I reduce one, but I'm able to maintain my staff, and so that's what, that's a great example as well as to what our principals and leaders are thinking about.
Right. And our kindergarten registration, has that been, is it tracking the same as it had last year, or do you remember, or do you know?
Susan, I don't have any updates on kindergarten just yet.
Yeah, once we go through the kindergarten registration, only represents a fraction of
I'm aware.
the
Yeah.
population, yeah. So Megan and I were planning on meeting after the break. She had asked for a little grace, and that we would look at the numbers at the beginning of May. So based on the April information that I have, there's a few hot spots, but in general, there's nothing that we can see at this moment that would cause us to say, oh, we're going to make a huge shift in our projection for kindergarten at this point.
One thing just to keep in mind, and I think you probably know this already, but people outside might not. Oftentimes when new kids come into the system, and if they're going into a grade where there might be, a questionable number of kids, we offer the family the ability to go to another school nearby, usually, that has a lower population. So just, keeping that in mind, that our policy does allow to enroll in any school, and offering that to parents. Sometimes they will decide that makes sense for them, especially if they're new to the system.
Carolyn, Stephen.
But I'm telling the rest of the committee who may not be aware.
Should I go ahead, Andy?
Please.
Thanks. So a few things. One is quick. I just want to say out loud, I've said this in email, but I don't know where that goes. I know it's work, but I really, really hope that at some point we will have a document that is a much updated version of the initial budget request. We've spent a ton of time, unfortunately, talking about what's not in the budget. I personally think it would be our responsibility, and it's certainly my hope to be able to ultimately look at what is in the budget, what our budget is and our program is, after all the changes that we've made. So that's just a request. And then following up on what I think was said at the TSP and select board, I think Linus or Susan, when talking about the positions in reserve, mentioned that you're already looking at 3 places where you anticipate using those. So I'd love if you could talk about that.
Happy to.
You say what those are, and then I have another point and question after, but.
Well, actually, there are a number of hot spots we have our eyes on right now.
Mhm.
Driscoll at grade 5 is
Mhm.
one of them. So I'll just give you the hot spots.
Yeah.
Driscoll grade 5, Hayes grade 2, Lawrence grade 4, Runkle grade 3, and FRR grade 2.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Sorry,
And
how
sort
many
of
was that total? That was 5? Sorry,
Five.
I just,
Yep,
okay,
there's
thank you.
5.
Okay.
I'm not saying we have to add them. Those are the ones that we are monitoring closely because they're right.
Yeah.
And as you know from like last year, sometimes the enrollment starts to go down. So we've got a few less over at
Yeah.
FRR, but it doesn't, so it's not rising, but it's still not sufficient enough to take our eyes off it. So there's 5 hotspots for sure. I think that we're going to absolutely, from what I'm looking at right now, need to add the grade 5 at Driscoll.
Mhm.
Like that seems essential. The other ones, we have an eye on them, just because they, even in the budget document, you'll see that the numbers are high. They're like right on the edge there. So a couple students or 8 students go, you don't need to add it. But if it stays at or starts to increase, then we're really gonna have to do something there. In the
Okay.
other areas, I'm not seeing anything right now. But
Okay.
certainly we'll keep you aware of that. And then once Megan and I have a chance to sit down in the beginning, after the school vacation week, we'll sit down and then I'll provide you with an update on what class sizes are looking like.
Okay,
And
and
that
so.
form that Megan referenced, I think Helen may have asked about it earlier, that directly impacts sort of those decisions. So when you initially received sort of the section breakdown, that was a point in time, and so it's shifted. It's been a month or more now since you've received that, and so it's continuously shifting based on family decisions and choices.
And so, and then obviously, I mean, even though I appreciate, if we're talking about reducing the budget through in positions, even if it is that people leave, that's sort of less harmful and achieves that budget cut. But of course, then the impact is in the classroom. So thank you for answering the question about the reserves that you had your eye on. But I hope that we'll be, having a comprehensive conversation about what the impacts are, even if the only losses were through attrition. Related to that, I need to reiterate something I've asked a few times in email. That table that was linked to one of the FAQs is terrific and chock full of information. I don't know who made it. But I do have to point out, and it's really important, it had some fundamental mistakes in terms of the building capacities. That beautiful table shows Driscoll as a 3-section school. Our big expensive new Driscoll is a 4-section school. And one of the nice things about that table was it had a row for like seats available while staying out of hot territory. So it seems important for that to be accurate. And it also didn't take into account, I think it had Pierce in its old building. I don't know how different it is, what the capacity is at Newberry and at OLS. And it also shows the Baker School as a 4-section school, which it functions as barely, but Baker is built as a 3-section school. So I would love if, as we're having these conversations, it would be helpful, because that's part of that holistic piece. And I'm just going to say one more thing. As we're starting to talk about this potential loss of educator jobs and possible pink slips, I mean, the implication and the statement from Dr. Guillory last week was that there's no more on offer from staff. I guess I just want to, we're continuing to get emails from the community. I don't believe we were presented with a rationale for all of the work that's specific in the school department in HR. I don't think we've been presented with a rationale for the full staffing in Office of Teaching and Learning. And I'm just going to say it because I want to say it. I think that if unaligned staff took a pay freeze, took one for the team, that's probably 3 educators. So just want to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we got Stephen, Helen, and then I think maybe we should move to an update on Brookline Adult and Community Education to follow up on our conversation last Thursday. Stephen?
Thanks, Andy. 2 questions and a brief comment. So first question is for Dr. Guillory. I'm wondering if, just recalling the last time the district sent out pink slips, I'm wondering if there's been any opportunity to talk with the BEU about any joint messaging around the possibility of pink slips to explain the district's position and our intentions to possibly reduce the level of alarm around this, and how we're hoping to quickly walk them back in hopes of negotiating with the town, or if that has not been a possible communication strategy.
So Justin and I, as well as the BU team and the district leadership team, have been meeting rather frequently around this and keeping each other informed as such. And so we will continue down that path. And when we get to that juncture point, we will certainly join forces as well, because we've been discussing this for about a month or so internally.
Okay, I appreciate that. My second question was following up on Carolyn's comment on sections. I guess this is for both you, Dr. Guillory, and for you, Dr. Givens. Some of the feedback that we heard at PTOs was that if there was sufficient data showing that that there was in fact going to be a need for additional FTEs at schools, was it possible to allocate some of those reserve sections earlier rather than later, given the inevitability that the hiring pool would dry up by August, or at least be a lot smaller in August than it would be now? Since we know, for instance, that Driscoll, as you said, Dr. Givens, is extremely likely to need that FTE, is it possible that the hiring process could begin immediately rather than start in August, as Dr. Guillory, I think, was your initial strategy? I guess I'm asking that to either Dr. Givens or Dr. Guillory.
So, Susan, I'll punt it over to you, but I think what we were saying, Stephen, was, and what Susan was just saying a minute ago, is that she and Megan are going through doing a cross-check on enrollment now. And so it would be to our advantage, especially if we're looking at displacing educators, to take advantage of those individuals that we know, especially if we're going to add a section to a school, so that we're not going out, but we're leveraging our internal resources there. So Susan, you want to round that out?
Sure. So as we look at the process of identification. We need to start with, I think, to Mariah's point, we can't take them randomly, right? We can't eliminate positions randomly. And so, we have talked before about there are seats and there are people that fill the seats. So what we need to do is identify what seats. And then from there, we go through this process that takes, it's quite onerous. But we go through this process of identifying if those seats are eliminated, what staff do we move where? And so when you have folks that are retiring, then that's great because then it doesn't bump somebody that's in a seat. But the process starts with identifying the seats and then placing as many of our educators in the seats that are left as possible. And we have to follow the riffing language when we do that. So just to, assure you that it won't be, and it can't be random because there's rights under the contract and an order in which we have to place people that has to be followed. So yeah, once we have the enrollment information, we're meeting with principals the Monday that we return, and that is the nature of the work that we'll be doing. I was looking at these numbers today before the meeting because I wanted to refresh my memory about, what's it looking like now, but I don't, we usually update the information, multiple times during the year. And when I reached out to Megan to get fresh numbers even for today, and she's like, I just, she's juggling 100 things and trying to get some of these enrollments placed. This is a very busy time for our churn. And so she's working feverishly to get the data as current and correct as possible so we can make good decisions.
Thanks, Dr. Givens.
Yep.
I'd just like to make one brief comment also. I just want to thank you, Dr. Givens, and thank you, Dr. Guillory, for iteratively bringing proposed cuts to the school committee and for looking into areas for possible cost efficiencies and further cuts. It's my very strong understanding from the MASC course that we all took as school committee members that school committee members may request areas to look into or can vote a budget up and down, but it's really not our prerogative to request rationales for whether a position should remain in a budget from year to year in a budget conversation, much less request that a specific position or activity or specific program or direct cost be justified in a budget conversation. I think that's for us to defer to your expertise when defending the excellence of the overall education program put forth. So I just want to reiterate that I appreciate the iterative process that we've gone through, and I think it's an overstep to request specific cuts to specific personnel or activities by the school committee. Thank you.
All right, Helen and Sarah, then I'd like to ask Mariah for an update on Brookline Adult and Community Education.
This is just a quick question. When we had been at Driscoll School, I visited both the 3rd and 4th grade, which will be next year's 4th and 5th. I thought that both grades were sort of at that pressure point, but what I hear you saying is only one of them is.
We had addressed one in the budget process already.
Oh, I wasn't aware. So the 4th grade there will already be.
Let's look at. I had checked a few of them that were problematic now, and the only one at Driscoll that was on the So next year's 4th grade, we had added a section.
Oh, okay,
already.
Great. I didn't. I had.
Next year's 5th, we held on.
Okay.
And so it's the 5th grade that may, in fact, right now, based on our numbers, the class sizes are very, very small in next year's 4th grade.
Okay, great.
Well under 20, like in the 17 range right now. Okay.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank
And Sarah?
Andy, I think you'll be pleased to know that I got the answers to all my questions over the
Oh,
course of
great.
the last.
Okay. All right, then, Mariah, would you mind updating us on some conversations, sort of following up on last Thursday's discussion of base?
Yeah, before I do, I want to take a moment to see if we can do the motion adjusting the vote for OEE that we didn't take last week because of the order in the agenda. So I just want to get that out of the way really quickly before I get into base, if that's okay with you, Andy.
That's fine. Do you
Okay.
have a reasonable wording for that motion?
Yes, because Betsy sent us reasonable wording for that for that motion. So thank you, Betsy. So this is the motion that I'm going to make, which is motion to clarify actions taken by the school committee on March 13th, 2025, relative to the elimination of the Office of Educational Equity. The vote included savings realized by eliminating 2 OEE staff and related materials and supplies from the operating budget. It also included savings realized by eliminating the equity lead stipends charged to the Title II grant. The March 13th, 2025 votes did not include 23,500 pledged from the Brookline Education Foundation for FY26 OEE initiatives. The FY26 operating budget savings, therefore, should be recorded as $381,545, not $405,045 as presently shown on the running tabulation of reductions. Thank you, Betsy.
I'm
That's
not known for my
good.
brevity, unfortunately.
All
right.
right, is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, so this came up as new business last time, but we weren't able really to discuss it. So is there any discussion at this point?
I
Yeah,
just have a
Suzanne.
quick question.
I see Suzanne, Stephen,
sorry.
and now Carolyn. Yep.
Yeah, hi, could you just explain, are we reopening whether we are voting for OEE or we are
No,
only?
that's conversation is not for now, but that BEF told somebody, I think Jody, but I don't remember who, that they would not allow us to reallocate those funds for a different purpose, which was what our original vote, well, what some people's original vote would have done. And so this is just saying, if we get those monies, it's only going to be for those OEE purposes. Right now, OEE is eliminated, so those monies are off the table. If the OEE is returned, they may, as there is a community drive happening for, then they could reallocate those funds, but those funds don't contribute in either way. They are dedicated to specific purposes that will only exist if OEE exists.
So a yes vote means that
Means
we
that
could
we
still accept those funds?
we can still accept those funds in the future, just we don't get to take it as a credit on our
Reduction.
on our budget gap reduction,
Yeah,
right?
Right. That's how I understood it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I see still Carolyn's hand up at this point.
And to be clear, we never accepted the BEF money, correct?
I don't think we have accepted it yet. I don't think it's come to us yet.
Okay.
Yep. I think that they've notified the district. I don't know exactly sure where we are, but I think they've told the district very recently in advance of the budget cycle. But I don't think any of the actual formal notifications have come to the committee to accept yet. Is that correct, Susan, to your knowledge?
Correct.
Yes.
So it was just a wording mistake where the thing was worded that we would reallocate. We're just not taking, we never took it to begin with. Fine.
Right.
Okay, I see no more hands, so let's go to a vote. Jesse,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Helen,
Yes, I think you said that.
Mariah,
Yes.
Suzanne,
I'm abstaining.
Stephen,
Yes.
Sarah,
Abstaining.
and I'll vote yes as well. Okay, so Mariah, would you like to update us on base?
Yes, I will update on base. So following our meeting last week and the conversation that the committee had about base, when what I thought was quite strong support for base and sort of our struggle with this challenge around funding. I reached out to the Director of Recreation and the Parks and Recreation Commission to inquire about their willingness to at least discuss the idea of base being consolidated with recreation. We had a positive meeting earlier today. It was Susan and I, one of the commissioners from Parks and Rec, the recreation director and assistant director, the base director, and the chair of the base advisory board. And at the outset, I sort of explained that it was very clear, as I just mentioned from our conversation last week, that school committee really wants the types of offerings, the successful offerings that base has and the base legacy to survive, and that also that base brand and history is compatible with how recreation runs its programs as well. And I think it was a really, really, as I said, positive meeting. The recreation staff and the PSB staff are going to follow up on this conversation. Rec is going to get some of the sort of background data, numbers, analysis from PSB to understand what kinds of programming and which programs could work from their perspective within the rec framework, I guess I'll describe it as. They're going to consult with Chaz to, see where he stands on this and consult with their commission, and they will come back to us. Because of the timing, obviously, it would be impossible to come back before our May 1st deadline. So we wouldn't really be able to wait on making a decision for base on what Rec said, but they did say that of course, they hope, like, I think it was within 1 or 2 months. Is that about right, Susan? Yeah, they just need to be able to do the work, the collaborative work with PSB staff to really understand how this could work. And of course, there's no commitment from them at this time because they haven't done any of this background knowledge gathering that they need to do. But again, it was a very positive discussion, and I think that I'm enthusiastic that there might be a path forward for base that really works in terms of the synergies with staffing, with systems, with the many other things. And both the rec staff and base staff, the rec director and the base director, noted that they're already working together. Like, they run summer programs out of the same buildings in PSB. And so this is already, a lot they're already doing together. And so that was again, I was just really grateful for the willingness to come together and to talk about this. And it feels like a positive conversation that may generate a good outcome. So the way I see we're sort of the 3 paths forward right now. And I guess there's 4. I'll say there's 4. The first is PSB chooses to fund base for next year. The second is PSB ends base after the summer program. The
Excuse
third
me,
is,
Mariah,
yeah,
that first one that you gave, PSB funds base for next year, that's with the supplemental money they requested?
yes, right. Well,
Okay.
I guess the 267,000 at minimum. I'm laying out the entire universe right now. So funding base for next year, ending base after the summer program, pausing base after the summer program, at minimum, I would say, for the balance of the next fiscal year, or base transferring to rec. And is there any other universe possibility that anyone wants to mention that I might have omitted?
Can I just say, Mariah, that
Endowment or something, I guess.
But that's not that's not currently on the table. Go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say that option number 3, to pause it for next year, we would still have to lay off all the staff.
That's right. That's right. And so to this point, both whether we end it or whether we pause it, essentially that still means that for those staff, there is no position following the summer program this summer. Stephen, do you have another universe to suggest?
I don't know that it's a whole universe, but I
Yeah.
guess I'm still not totally clear on why we can't offer, say, half of what's being requested or some portion of what's being requested and say, this is all we can commit to, and we need you to work within that budget to continue to operate.
Well, because PSB is bound by law to close the deficit in the revolver at the end of next fiscal year, either way.
But to say that they can't overspend this amount. I guess I'm not
Susan,
sure why
what-
why
Yeah,
they
so-
why they are able um to incur funds beyond what we allot to them. I'm
I-
sorry, to incur costs beyond what we guarantee.
I think there, it's important to kind of step back into what
Michelle.
Michelle had shared with us, and that is that they had reduced their staff significantly and have been growing staff back, but at no point in the last 5 years have they been able to run a program that was profitable. And so trying to right size base has been a strategy that they have followed. It hasn't unfortunately resulted in an improved financial situation for them.
Oh
So
no,
like,
I know.
yeah.
I'm not saying that they need to get right sized immediately. I'm just saying, can we buy them time with a certain amount of funding, since our current options seem to be all or nothing, while they have time to negotiate with other government bodies, while they have time to pursue other courses of action. That's my only question. If that is a non-existent universe, then I'll just stop talking right now. And I remember your comment from last time, Dr. Gibbons, that
Mhm.
these business models simply may not exist, and I may just be dreaming, in which case, these are things I don't know.
Yeah. I think if we weren't in such deficit this year and having to use every fund balance that we have to get through this year, that maybe there would be some options. I just don't happen to see them, Stephen, unfortunately.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So thank you, Stephen. So I guess given these four options in front of us, I guess the question for the committee is, do we want to make a motion tonight? Or are we still wanting to defer the decision? To me, the most palatable decision, hang on one second, Helen, I'm going to answer my own question and then I'll call you. Or I guess Andy will call on you. To me, the most palatable decision is to pause base for the balance of FY26. I think that that would leave hope for rec to be able to come in following our decision and pick it up. That would again retain the summer programs that we've already committed, and that would not foreclose on any future possibility for base to be restarted, but it just recognizes the financial situation that we are in for the upcoming year. So that's sort of my feeling is that's the best of the options, but I'm not sure I'm ready to make a motion yet myself.
Just to clarify, that option means laying off the entire current staff of base.
Right, those positions would be eliminated. I don't know how it works. Again, just separating positions versus people. There may be bumping rights associated with some of those people. But yes, those
Eliminating
positions
all
would
of the
be
positions
eliminated.
would
Yes.
be- Okay, Helen and then Suzanne.
So I'm unclear. I know that we did vote, correct, to continue base through the summer. I don't see the urgency right now while they're in negotiations with the rec department to make that decision today.
Well, the only thing is that I believe we're still bound for the union members to notify of them or anyone who would be impacted by the base elimination, whatever that riffing might do in bumping.
I don't think that they are part of the BEU or any of the other.
They have, I think, at least 2 BISA secretaries, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Secretaries. Okay. Well, I think that would, I still feel that we could wait on that, my opinion.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that there's $53,000 that is pending that decision in our calculator.
Suzanne?
Yeah, I also don't see the urgency for tonight. I would really like to give them a little bit of time to work something out with rec. And we come back and look at it I don't know, in June, if they've had 2 months to figure out something, or just to see if they've gotten something. I mean, to pause it would mean to shut it down, and then they're not around to do the work, to make it work together. So
Well,
I would like to
they're
give them some
not-
time.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. My understanding is that whatever we do now or don't do, I mean, everybody's around until the end of August.
Right. Right, but if we're saying we're going to pause even at September 1st, then come September, there will not be any employees of base to keep working on some kind of negotiations or, work together. So I'd rather not make that decision tonight. I'd rather give them some time to see if they can come up with something that'll work for them, for base and rec together.
Just want to note that by delaying means that we will not be able to take advantage of the cut to preserve additional reductions.
Can you explain that?
I'm saying that if the action is taken during the budget process, then the $53,000 is then applied towards the reductions that we make. If you wait until September, it doesn't. There won't be any. We can't take, we won't be able to take
So
the credit against this
we're
budget.
my understanding was we're not carrying any deficit in our budget for next year, or that it wasn't in our budget, the deficit for next year. Is it in our budget for next year? And by making a decision, it would go down 53,000, our deficit? Is that what you're saying?
So there's two parts. There's the deficit that is not in our budget. The 53,000 in benefits is something that would have a positive impact on reducing our gap because it reduces the costs. It increases the revenue available to us.
And that's prorated through September?
It won't,
It was already counted in when, right,
Yes.
Susan, Susan already fractionally said that we would still run a positive balance through September
right.
due to the summer programming.
Would be covered, so that would be the total 53,000.
Yeah, right. So if you wait until September, then it has no, we will not get.
Wait until another 2-3 weeks when they can talk about it, it will have an impact.
Just to be clear, they said they would not be ready in 2 or 3 weeks. They said they needed more time than that. It would be closer to 1 to 2 months.
I also don't see how we could wait until September because we have to present a budget to town meeting in May. And if we don't sunset base now, then we have to add something to our budget to cover their expected loss for next year or whatever portion of next year we're proposing to keep them open. So, we can't just defer this until September. We have to actively add money to our budget if we don't sunset them now.
It's an and both, to Andy's point. We don't get the reduction and we have to cover the deficit and we have to have an appropriation within the budget to do that.
I think this is a longer discussion. I mean, I'm not prepared to vote to sunset them now. I thought we were going to give them some time. I know we don't have much time, but it just, if you sunset them, it's gone September 1. And I don't know that that's what we're ready for. Maybe we're prepared to vote for that. I don't know. I'm not, but.
Okay, Jesse has had his hand up for quite a while. I'm sorry, Jesse, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I agree with where Susanna's going in terms of giving them more time, but I most certainly agree with you as well, Andy, that the fact that we've gotten to base as a discussion item in the second half of April now is just the reality. The other reality, in the same reality or the same universe is a need to balance the budget. And I think whatever is happening as a result of us catalyzing this discussion with the Parks and Rec and other community people who are now aware of what will happen after the summer, that we need to act decisively, not because we don't believe that Bay should continue, but that we know, as Susan said, that we're going to lose on one end and also add something that we can't afford. So I would say that delaying our vote isn't going to change the base result, right? In other words, they're working separately now. I mean, look, I've been working with people in the community to see if we can gather a group of people to help them. There are other people that have asked me through other liaisons that I'm on to ask them to reach out to Michelle and team and work with them. So there are people looking at it. It's just the timing right now doesn't really allow us the luxury of delaying any longer than town meeting, as you said. And we don't really have a lot of school committee meetings between now and then anyway, maybe 2 or something like that. So 2 or 3. So my sense is even though I think the community is very well aware that everyone on the school committee agrees that BASE needs to stay as a town program, I think people also will see that the school committee itself, looking at our budget, can't afford to keep it on past August. So I would suggest we act sooner rather than later, as difficult and as painful as it is, but with the full realization to the community that we're 100% on board with keeping it. It just won't be funded by the school department.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would move what I just said. I mean, the motion would be that we move to sunset base following our recent decision to support it through the end of the summer, because as Dr. Gibbons has shown us, there's sufficient money so that we don't go so we don't have to pay extra. It will provide us some savings, and that we continue to work with all community partnerships to find a way to continue it after August 31st.
Is there a second to that motion?
Is sunsetting the same as pausing?
No.
I mean, the effect here, what I think what this motion does is it says that we are not going to add money to our budget to cover BASE's expected loss next year. A consequence of that will be that BASE will stop operating after August 31st.
Right. So sunsetting it, Stephen, means that when the sun sets on August 31st, the relationship budget-wise between the school department and BASE would end.
Right. So what would a pause entail?
That's why my hand is up.
Ah,
Oh, there you go.
Go ahead, Miranda.
Personally, I would prefer to vote for pausing the program. I think that we have heard a strong desire in the community to have this kind of programming. So even if PSB cannot afford it for the upcoming full year, I would prefer to say that we are pausing it, and that would give us, that would have make clear our intention to include it in any override that would be next spring, to be able to bring it back that following year. We're close to there.
As a school,
Since Jesse's motion hasn't been seconded yet, well, go ahead, Susan, if you have a comment on that before I do the parliamentary thing.
yeah, yes. I just want clarity around that description of pausing. Would that mean that it would remain a school program, or
I think it
or
would give us
not?
the flexibility, if rec comes forward to say, we've got a great plan, then we can say, this is awesome. You know, we're going to work with you to transition this, whether it's partway through 26 or 27. But I think that it also sends a signal that, like, if rec doesn't have a way that they want it to, that they can see that makes it a really great program for the community. Because ultimately, I think as school committee, I think you alluded to this, Jesse, we are less, it's not that we are clinging to it in PSB. We want it as a service to the Brookline community. And if it can thrive in rec, that is a great outcome. And if it can't, then we want to still be able to sort of say, but wait, we want to be able to reconsider this, given the potential for future funding.
But it imposes no financial obligation on us for
Correct.
fiscal 26.
Correct.
Yeah.
But to me, it signals our that we are not satisfied with the program being sunset. We are voting for it, but as a financial decision, not because we believe that the program should go away. So,
Right, I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Okay, so
Okay.
Jesse, since your motion wasn't seconded yet, if you want to accept that as a friendly amendment to your motion, you can do that without the committee having to approve.
Yeah, I would accept what Mariah added, yes. As amended.
So is there a second to this amended motion?
So I'd like to second it, but just to clarify what I'm seconding, this is a motion to suspend funding to base for the 25-26 school year. Or to pause funding to base for that year,
for fiscal year 26.
for fiscal year 26.
After August 31st, because that's in the fiscal year.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to, so it's a motion to pause funding to base for fiscal year 26 after August 31st.
But just so I'm clear, there's no difference in those two things because it's going to be cash flow positive through August 31st anyways, right, Susan?
Very likely. Okay, I second that motion.
Yeah, that is what Susan told us, Mariah, is that
Yes.
the way the fund is, that it'll be drained by the end of August.
Well, it'll be cash flow positive, but there would be a small balance at the end of August,
Right,
I think.
right,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so thank you, Stephen, for the second. So I see Carolyn and then Suzanne.
Thank you. My hand was up for something else, but I'll just, and to be clear, that means the 6 staff positions will be eliminated. Okay.
And
Suzanne?
I think
Oh, comment?
one of the things I just want to be clear about too, and maybe we can clarify this with Michelle, is that if the program this spring is not going to run, you know, in a sustainable way, that we should not be offering, you know, some of those programs. So in other words, when she and I sat down together and we went through it, she gave me the best case scenario. I asked her then for the worst case scenario. If it's the worst case scenario, it could be problematic in terms of the fund balance, if you remember that presentation that I made. So I will, you know, I will have a conversation with Michelle about ensuring that as we close the year, that we're not going to run any programs that can't at least break even this spring, so that we don't run into a problem with having to cover expenses from base in the current fiscal year.
Thanks,
Just-
Dr. Givens.
Yeah.
Suzanne, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll just give it one more try. I'll probably vote against this because I feel like we told Michelle that we would give her a little time to come back to us with either a balanced budget or some kind of program going forward. It doesn't mean that eventually we don't have to do what we're now talking about, but I feel like we owe that to her and we owe it to the community. I don't know that this was posted, that we would be voting on this. I don't know, was it? But I feel like that this will surprise the community that we're now taking this vote tonight. And I felt like we told Michelle that we would give her a chance to come back and at least present something to her and we could ask more questions. So, yes.
And Helen and Carolyn?
I actually agree with Suzanne. I think that it was posted that we might take a vote on any reductions or increases. So that, I mean, it is covered. However, I think that it's not fair to that community, and it's not fair to do it today. We do have a meeting on May 1st, and that's certainly within the time framework of what we're trying to do everything. And I for one would feel much more comfortable voting this, knowing that they were on their way to making an agreement with REC. I'm happy to try and facilitate that or do anything I can to make that happen, because it seems like 2 months is a long time to try and figure something out that shouldn't have to take that long.
Carolyn?
with true appreciation for the work you put into this, Mariah, and the care, I agree with Suzanne and Helen.
Just to be clear, you know, I thought it was important for us to get that conversational ball rolling, but I also, you know, I don't feel like like I said earlier, I was not going to necessarily make the motion tonight, and I think that we don't necessarily have to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so let's go ahead with a vote. I mean, I'm going to abstain because for the reason that Suzanne gave. I think you know, we did ask Michelle to come back to us. So you know,
Yeah, so I mean, Andy, in light of what we've heard so far, I think will save time because we're running late anyway. I'll just withdraw the motion and we'll move on. I mean, as I started my first statement, I emphasized that I was on board with Suzanne's philosophy of giving them time so that no one misconstrues my making the motion as trying to surprise the community. That wasn't the intent. It was more to move us forward in terms of what we said about knowing that the end of August, we're going to run out of money. And if we pause it, there are, as Carolyn pointed out, significant impact on the staff. And so giving them a little more time, if that will help, sure, I'm 100% for that. So I would withdraw my motion then.
okay, the only issue here is the May 1st.
Well, I mean, everyone who's commented not to move forward knows about the May 1st. So I'm happy to withdraw it. And there's 14 more days. So, okay, it's fine.
Just on the May 1st thing, either way, or I guess, Susan, you could proceed as, well, no, I guess you can't because you don't have direction from the committee.
Right.
Correct.
So Mariah, if I understand this correctly, when we get back together again and say it's a full committee, we're going to only have like, you know, a day or two or three or something to make a decision before May 1st. And that's still most likely not going to allow the base folks to assemble everything that they need and set everything into place. So I'm wondering if we're just in a very impossible time frame, as I said earlier. Like, do we really have to do something at the next meeting? If that's what we have to do, then as Andy said, we just may not have more information than we have now.
Yeah, is the May 1st deadline for BISA as well as for the BEU?
No, just for the teachers.
Oh, so
okay.
what is the deadline? Do you know for
I don't think there is.
BISA employees?
I would have to look up the date, Andy, to be honest with you. I don't have that off the top of my head. I'm going to guess probably June, but don't.
Okay.
Maybe that'll
Linus-
inform, that could inform our timeline. Obviously,
Yeah.
we still have the town meeting timeline, but that's at least for this case.
That's a good, yeah.
The relationship isn't the BISA, right? It's what dollar amount do we need to reduce in terms of pink slips to teachers in order to close the gap?
And that gap you're saying, Susan, is the 53K?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the relationship between the notices on May 1st. It's not that we have to give notice to BISA. It's that if we don't take the 53,000, I'm not arguing either way. I just want
Yeah,
you
of
to
course.
be clear. I
understand.
just want
That's
to-
why I'm saying, I believe what I said earlier was correct, that if we don't make this decision before May 1st, that 53 ends up is still in our gap and has to be then covered by a pink slip or alternative savings somewhere.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, Jesse asked to withdraw the motion. If there's no objection by anybody, then it can just be withdrawn. But yeah, I'm doing this on the fly and I'm very torn because I really don't see any universe in which we're able to step in and fund the expected loss next year. And so why are we postponing the inevitable in a way that's going to create operational problems?
Well, we do have one full school committee meeting before May 1st. Is that right?
Mhm.
So essentially that we have to docket this decision then, which is like 2 weeks from now or something. I mean, as you say, Andy, the difficult position we're in isn't going to change unless some solution is found before the next meeting.
Yeah.
Just to, sorry, is our next meeting May 1st?
Right, it would be too late in 2 weeks.
Right.
Well, then we need to schedule another meeting before then and make sure that Michelle has the date certain so that she can plan for it.
Yeah, currently the next meeting is scheduled for May 1st. We could do a short meeting just for this purpose. If well, even if there isn't something new to present, we would need to take a vote.
Okay, so will you do that?
Sure, it just needs to happen early enough to inform the work that goes into trying to do the pink slipping in an orderly way. So it would need to happen fairly soon. Okay, well, let's work to schedule a meeting. We don't have to do that right now, but yeah, I think I agree with Suzanne, and I also agree with Jesse. There's nothing good about this.
Well, there is a curriculum subcommittee meeting on the 29th that might be able to be a joint meeting.
I think that would be really hard for staff who need to figure out RIF lists to wait till the
But the
29th.
53,000 is not it's not even a full FTE.
And
I don't
guess
know, it feels really late.
But what it asks the committee is like, what new information could we possibly receive at this point that would cause us to, you know, to add money to our budget now in order to sustain base next year? Is there anything we could conceivably learn at this point that would make that seem possible or desirable? Suzanne?
Well, it is possible that they could come up with some preliminary something, not the full, which would allow the community to know that base is still going to be around and that they will work with rec department. We don't know what that might look like exactly. And we're going to hand over base to the rec department, or they will work something out. But it's possible in another 2 weeks that they might have some preliminary things. I know they can't have it all worked out, but that they could come to a kind of a tentative agreement, or they could come to some kind of a statement that says, base will continue. They're going
That's
to
not
work it
gonna
out with
happen
the
in
rec
2 weeks,
department.
Suzanne, though. They were really
Well-
clear that they needed time. And I think it's only fair. I mean, I'm not saying that we're not putting rec in a position like, this is an offer for them to accept or not. But I think that like they need the time to be able to work through this, and they can't renege if they were to accept it. So I think we really need to give them the appropriate time to do that analysis. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have
Well,
interrupted you. I just want to be really clear
Well-
that like the conversation earlier was very much that they need the time to do the work with PSB
Right, and I
staff.
appreciate what you're saying, Mariah. Not all of us in the committee have heard this before. I mean, you just reported tonight, so.
Sure, it just happened this afternoon, so, right.
Right, so, that's right. So, some of us, including Michelle, might need time to just think about this. I'm not so sure about the May 1st deadline in terms of pink slips. I know about the budget that has to be due. 53,000, as Helen mentioned, is not a lot of money. We're still talking about a $1.7 million deficit. So,
Can I make a
know-
motion then in that case to direct staff to proceed as if the 53,000 to plan as if we are not saving the 53,000 for now? It's only a fractional piece of one position, but it's allowing them to plan for how that might affect their decision tree of any cuts. It's only it's a fraction of a person, but it allows this committee to defer the decision so that staff could work in parallel. Would that be helpful, Susan? Or would that be worse? If it's worse, say so. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you would craft a motion like that. That would allow us to take the reduction without. I'd have to.
Okay,
How
well
would
then
you,
maybe
how
we
would you,
just,
how would you craft a motion like that?
I would just say to direct staff to what I just said, to direct staff to, you know, presume that the 53,000 is not going to be saved. I honestly, as to Andy's point, I don't see a universe, but if we are allowing this to continue to play out and to give space, I think we need to give that space. The issue is it's not 53,000, it's 267,000.
Right, the reduction off the gap is 53, plus you have to add minimum. Michelle said 400,000, but
Well, that was for 3
Right.
years, she said.
that was, well, at between
That was
260.
for 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I guess, I mean, just to go back to the motion we had earlier, Andy, I mean, it seems like the week of the 28th doesn't give anyone enough time. Is that right, Mariah? Because it's going to be too close.
I
And
defer to Susan, but I would imagine so. Is
All
that
right,
correct?
yeah, so if it's too close and next week is vacation and the people aren't available to meet, I'm assuming, then here we are on Wednesday evening, you know, 2 days before, a day before the school vacation. Where, I mean, Andy, where are the other days to discuss this? I mean, I'm not trying to be, you know, a bad guy here. I'm just saying there are no days left. Let's be practical. It's also 7:15 tonight, but I'm saying, let's be practical. We don't have a lot of days. I agree with Suzanne. It'd be great to wait till July to do this, but we have other, you know, priorities. So if we can't find the time between now, today and tomorrow, and then the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before our next meeting, but that's May 1st is our meeting. In a sense, I mean, we just have to, I don't know, swallow hard and say, oh, gee, we don't have any days left. So maybe we do need to decide something now, as tough as that is. Otherwise, we're just punting it until the Monday or Tuesday, and we'll be meeting like this again to talk about it.
So Susan, the Tuesday, the 29th, the curriculum subcommittee, that, I mean, my sense is that the 53,000, I don't know how it will impact the rest of the pink slips that might need to go out, but.
let me pose this as a way forward. When we do our work with the principals on Monday, we will do our planning as if you don't make the cut. You have the meeting on that Tuesday. I'm guessing that's the night of the curriculum subcommittee. You take it up then, and then we can always dial it back before the notices go out. But there's a lot of work that has to take place on Tuesday, once we determine what seats we're not going to have, to identify how to maximize retaining the staff that we have right now. It's a lot of work. I mean, it took us, Jody and I, no less than 2 weeks to do this just for the world language. It's very, very complicated. So I guess to marry up with what Mariah was suggesting, I will just plan as if you don't make the decision. And then if you do make the decision, then we can dial back one of the reductions. Do you know what I'm saying?
But if you do that, would you have to take an additional 267,000 in cuts?
I'm just saying we wouldn't send the notices out, but I'll prepare as if we are. You
Right,
know what I
but-
mean? I'll
but-
prepare for the worst case scenario, and then if the scenario is better on Tuesday, then at that point I can it's easier to restore than it is to figure out who the population will impact. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, my concern, Susan, was that we don't want you to do more work than you need to do because you're already stretched thin. So having
appreciate
two
that.
scenarios is not fair to you. If you want to go a bigger scenario that you can then just trim back a little bit, it's a little extra work, but it's not like having to do 2 complete models.
Right. It is a little bit more work because
Correct.
the ripple effect of different
Yes.
certifications. I have to look at more who can go where. It is a lot, but and in a very compressed period of time. So, but we'll do our very best to. I'm just trying to find you a path forward that you feel comfortable with in a situation that's uncomfortable.
Thank you.
Mariah, I think in terms of the additional money, we've made it clear that we can't afford that and we wouldn't be doing that. I mean, we've said they're only going forward through August 31st.
Well,
So
so again, there's four possibilities within the universe. Possibility A was we retain base. Possibility B was we sunset. Possibility C was we pause, and possibility D was it goes to rec. So if we're not willing to make the choices of B or C tonight, and we can't determine D, then Susan has to plan for A, which is 267,000. This is like a logic, like a math problem or something that we're
I thought we
detangling right now.
voted that we were pausing it in after August 31st.
No, what we voted was that we were committing to keep it open through the end of summer programming. We have not
Right.
said what we're doing for the rest of next year. That's what this conversation is about.
And Mariah, could I paraphrase you? Is this accurate that if we don't take the 53 in cuts, that implies that we're also committing to adding 267,000 to our budget?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it like, that's the practical implication of it.
Is there, I mean, again, just an option here, when you met with Town School Partnership or with Chaz, Andy, is there any flexibility on the town side to somehow find a way to help with base, or from the AC to help with base, or you can't put in a last minute warrant article, it's too late, but now that this is, again, somehow sprung on us 2 weeks before this pink slip deadline, is there a way out of the town side to find the money we need to keep this thing afloat so the program keeps going? Because the town recognizes how incredibly important it is, and of course we all do, but can we get the town administration to help us out of this particular pickle that we're in?
It has not come up in my conversations. I'm finding out about this today along with the rest of us.
I understand, but what I'm saying is that we know for sure that all 9 of us agree that we don't have the money for it. It's just that we don't want to make the decision because it's hard. I get it. Maybe what we need to do in the next week and a half is go to the town side and say, look, we, as a community, we need to keep this. The school can't afford it. You already know we're trying to close 1.7 million. How can you help us? Minimum money to just keep it running. We don't want to pause it because you lose the positions. It may have to be smaller at some point, but that gives us another sort of valve, I guess, like Mariah, in terms of finding some funding temporarily through the town.
Hearing this, what you're saying, Jesse, I am going to make the motion again for pausing the program. I didn't want to make the motion tonight, but like as we're discussing this is a path without a future to defer this vote.
Yeah.
And if something were to change that that somehow more revenues could be identified, we can always reconsider it later on. But at this point, I don't see how our budget can absorb the 267,000. And so I'm going to make the vote. I'm going to make the motion again. And if we second it, we can have the vote. And if it passes, it passes. And if it doesn't, then we have to reschedule this conversation and Susan has a plan to proceed. But like, we're on almost hour 2 of this and
I
like,
second it.
okay, great. So this is just something
All
where
right.
we can get off the dime.
Yeah. Is there any further discussion before we vote? I'm going to support it. I've changed my mind based on the last few minutes of our conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any hands up, so let's do the roll call. Jesse,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Helen,
Abstain.
Mariah.
Yes, with tremendous gratitude to Michelle and her team for all of their hard work and understanding the situation we're in and hoping that we are going to create a path for base.
Ditto.
Suzanne,
No,
Stephen,
A sad yes.
Sarah.
Sarah had to leave.
Oh, okay. So that leaves me and I vote yes.
Where did that leave us? 411?
511.
511.
Sorry, I'm gonna be super pokey here. Jesse said ditto. Are you?
No, that was, I already voted yes. The ditto was
I'm
on
so
everything
sorry.
that
I'm
Mariah
so
said,
sorry. I missed
because
that.
I'm as passionate as keeping the program as anybody else, really. I just didn't add a commentary to my vote, but I agree with everything that all the commentaries too.
So again, this leaves the door open for us to continue working with REC,
Yes.
to support base through the planning that we can do on that, and also through the summer program. And if there's an opportunity to other opportunities that come up, of course, we'll explore them. And it also gives Susan some closure on the budgetary aspects as she and the team work towards May 1st.
All right, thank you. So, yeah, my apologies for allowing that discussion to run so long, but I think, it certainly reflects how torn we are about this and also just the operational challenges that are coming into focus right now.
Andy, I think it was worth a long discussion, and I wonder if it's also worth putting out a communication about this.
Maybe the
Given,
communications team can talk about that tomorrow.
sure.
Okay. Just because it's already 7:25.
So we move on to new business. Anyone want to raise new business? Okay, I don't see any hands, so let's adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Good
Thank
night.
you.